All right, what's up, guys? We got Scott Lowder here to talk about music, movies, pop culture. He also plays music, has a podcast, and was a Twitch streamer. So, what's going on, Scott? How you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a little chilly here in North Carolina today, but I can't complain too much.
Yeah, I forgot you're in North Carolina.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
sure. Yeah. I've been a podcaster for probably about 2 or 3 years now. Worked with a podcast called Talking Without Thinking. We're kind of like a comedy podcast. We do it kind of in like segments, so it's a little bit different than most. It's not just talking straight through. So yeah, I've been doing that for a couple of years. I've been a musician for like 20 years. More recently, like producing like new upcoming artists and stuff. And also streamed on Twitch for a couple of years too, like during the pandemic, which was a lot of fun. Met a lot of cool people on there. So I've done a little bit of everything. So
All right, cool. So, what kind of music do you play or produce?
so when I first started, I was like a pop punk kid back in the day. Probably back in like the early 2000s, I did pop punk music for a long while. Then kind of moved on to more to like 90s alternative type stuff. And then here more recently, I've been working with a lot of like indie pop artists. It's been pretty easy to move like a producer business. Like I produce usually for like clients that hire me on. So it's been pretty easy to move it to like remote, especially over like pandemic stuff that happened. And I was able to kind of transition to like all online. I would honestly work a lot like on Zoom calls and stuff, just with artists that were interested in me like producing tracks for them, and they would kind of sing over them. So it was a lot of fun doing that, but a lot of work. So yeah, I've kind of moved away from that over the last couple of months, and just working on the podcast thing. I have a lot more fun doing that, get a lot more enjoyment out of that. And it's a lot less stressful too. It's like cool just talking to people, you know?
Yeah. So, are these like your main gigs, or do you have like a real job? Not a real job, but a normal
I
job?
mean, you could call it a real job. Yeah, I've got an actual
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
full-time job too. I work in software actually, which makes it very easy to do all these other creative endeavors outside of like the normal like full-time job. So yeah, I'm a software quality assurance engineer. So I like test software for a bigger software company. So
All right. That's definitely a real job. That's a big
yeah.
boy job right there.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
yeah. Normally the guests I have on like come in like they're like experts on an issue. So this is a little bit more go with the flow than
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
used to, but that's totally fine. But yeah, so as far as the music goes, yeah, I basically into the same kind of stuff. Like, pop punk back in early 2000s with like Blink-182 and
Oh yeah.
all those bands. I then got into it was like the normal phase from like pop, what was ska, then like pop punk,
Oh
and
yeah.
then like emo, then like screamo, and then
You
I
got
was in
the
a band at
progression,
one
man.
point. Yeah, exactly. I was in a band that went like full hardcore, and like that was when I exited the band because that just got too heavy for me.
Yeah.
And then I got into like indie. So for the past like 10 years, I've pretty much been into like indie rock, indie pop, like you said.
Yeah.
But I've noticed like I don't know if it's just me, but like a pretty bad downturn in terms of at least what I liked. Would you agree? And it doesn't seem like I
Yeah.
hear a whole lot of people talking about it, but a lot of the bands just recently haven't been doing it for me as much as they did like 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, I feel like nowadays it's so processed and it's music's lost a lot of its personality, I think is really what it comes down to. Everyone's trying to get that next like viral TikTok hit or whatever it is now. And people aren't writing as much um from like a feeling standpoint. You know what I mean? It's more of like, oh, we're gonna use all these fake keys, all these fake instruments, all this fake everything, and then we're just gonna sing over top of it. And it's lost a lot of, I don't know, like the emotion. It's lost a lot of like what like the 90s and 2000s had, where you can listen to those songs like over and over again, and the listenability is like really high. Whereas like all these new artists coming out, you see how fast it just like cycles through now. Like a song will come out and within a month you don't hear about it anymore. It just kind of gets buried in the Spotify pits or wherever else it goes at that point. And it's like, if you think about it, we still listen to stuff that we listened to when we were younger. And I don't know that like kids nowadays are going to go back and like listen to songs that really like hit them for like a couple of weeks, in the 2020s, it's really hard to look at music nowadays and see it as something that's going to have like staying power and really have that like 70s, 80s, 90s feel. Like those decades had like a sound, but you can't even describe kind of what the sound is of today. You know what I mean? It's not very unique. It's kind of a little bit of
Ye-
everything.
Yeah, for sure. Like they're mixing and matching everything. Like I think indie is now like kind of like pop, and
Yeah.
pop is indie, and then it's like pop is also rap, and everything
Yep.
mixes together. And like what do you think about, like, so what are you listening to now? Like I was just gonna mention like Taylor Swift's new album seems to be
Yeah,
like kind of like the biggest thing right now, I guess, right? Are you listening,
it
are you
is.
into that kind of stuff, or
Um, I liked her older stuff, and the newer one just didn't do anything for me.
yeah.
I think it's too stripped back. I hate all the new stuff that's coming out that wants to sound like Billie Eilish. It seems like everyone wants to have that sound now, and I kind of feel like this like new Taylor album, it sounds exactly like that too. It's got the real stripped back feel, not a whole lot of instrumentation, very low key and very like lyric centric, which is fine. Like that's kind of her thing, but the musicality is kind of, I don't know, it's not there for me. Um, lately
Yeah.
it's weird. I've been listening to a lot of weird stuff lately. I'm gonna sound really old, but I'm not. The new Springsteen album that just came out, real good.
Oh
It's
wow. Yeah.
it's weird to say. I've never been a big Bruce Springsteen fan ever.
Yeah.
A couple songs here and there, like like the staples from back when you were a kid, like the Born in the USA and things like that. Like, yeah, that's cool, Bruce. But like the new album he has out's really good. It's like a cover album of like soul songs that I've really like enjoyed listening to over the past week or so since it came out. Um,
Okay.
but other than that, man, like there's not a lot that really like jumps out at me that's blowing my hair back. Like I said, there's stuff I'll listen to for like a week or so and never listen to it again.
Yeah, yeah, that's how it seems like it is. And yeah, I listened to like it's actually like an internet radio show with the singer of Vampire Weekend.
I do, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the singer of Vampire Weekend like hosts the show, and they tend to go into a lot of like classic rock type stuff. Like this last one, they went into like I honestly I was only like half paying attention to what they were talking about, but it was like Bob Dylan has like I guess he wrote a book, and then like I don't know if you know anything about Bob Dylan, but
I do a little bit, yeah.
yeah, I guess he wrote like a book, and then they were talking about how he was doing some sort of like radio show podcast thing or something. But
Hmm.
yeah, they definitely talk about like Bruce Springsteen a lot, Bob Dylan. They mentioned like Boston in the last one,
Yeah,
stuff like that. I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, like Grateful Dead and stuff like that.
yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the stuff for me, I mean, I could talk about this. This is just like right up my alley. I actually kind of wanted to start like an indie rock type podcast, but wasn't able to find any friends to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the indie rock stuff that's coming out, a lot of it, I think the main problem that I have with it is it's just like you said, it all kind of bleeds together, but then also it's kind of like just too slow for me. And it's
Yeah.
like Phoebe Bridgers, stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
like I'm into her, but all that kind of stuff, that folk stuff, like I'm into it. It's just a little too mellow for me. I can't.
Yeah.
I like to kind of like get pumped up, more like band. I don't know if you know like bands like Brand New and Taking
Oh
Back
yeah.
Sunday.
I mean,
Yeah,
I listened to them growing up. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I saw Brand New in a room with like 20 people in it.
Oh
So
damn.
they opened up
Where?
for the starting line at this small little
Oh,
like upper like area. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh. I was born and raised there. So we got a lot of cool shows up there. A lot of cool shows. Not as many as we get in Charlotte now, but yeah, there was this really small room that fit maybe like 200 people, and it was Brand New, Pop Unknown. I don't know if you know Pop Unknown. They were kind of an emo band that never really like broke out. I'll never forget. I funny story about them, but Starting Line headlined it, and the Starting Line had just put out like their 5-song EP. like the original. I can't remember what it was called. It had a bicycle on the cover. Anyways, so like Pop Unknown, I guess something happened with their set, and they were only able to play like 3 songs, and they literally like pitched a fit on stage or throwing stuff, breaking stuff. It was amazing. But that's all I remember about them. They had one really good song that I liked, but that was about it. But anyways, yeah, I grew up like in that scene. Like I opened up for Fall Out Boy before they were big, like right after
Oh,
Take This to Your Grave came out. Yeah. That was a
damn.
dope show. There was we opened up for them in a fire hall in Pennsylvania.
Okay, wow. Yeah, my co-host who isn't here, but he's up in San Jose on some like business
Mm-hmm.
meeting or something, business retreat or something. I think he played with Fall Out Boy too when they were real small
Oh,
in
really?
Chicago. Yeah, because you know
That's
they're from
awesome.
Chicago. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So how big was the show that you played with them there? Was
Uh
that when they were smaller?
they were smaller. I think there was maybe 150 kids there. Maybe. I just remember after the show, like Pete Wentz came out and like hung out in our car and just like talked for like half an hour with us. He was the coolest dude in the band of all of them. The rest of them were really like kind of standoffish. Especially like the bass player and the drummer, like Andy and Joe, like just kind of were off to the side. They say, "Hey, what's up?" whatever, but kind of just kept to themselves. But like Pete is kind of like he was the same persona that you saw on TV for 5 or 10 years during like the TRL era. Um, he was the same guy, just pretty outgoing, and like he was honestly a really nice dude when I met him. So I have nothing bad to say about him.
Yeah, that's interesting. I probably for a bad reason, but would just like assume that he only because he's the most famous. I would like probably just
Yeah,
assume that maybe now he's the bit. I don't know. I don't even know, but I would think that like Patrick Stump would always be like the
the chillest
nicest.
dude.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, just by judging them from looks. You know what I
And he
mean?
may have been like, he just didn't really talk to us at all. He was like pretty low key. Like, I think he's a very introverted person. From what I like gathered from, that's kind of what, if I remember, like when I was talking to Pete, he was talking to us about, he's like, yeah, the other guys are really kind of low key. Like they kind of, you know, just do their own thing. And once they play, they, kind of go into their hiding space or whatever. But
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, and it seems like a lot of bands tend to be like that kind of like when I first started this podcast, it was me and a friend doing it, and was trying to get like bands on from Instagram or whatever and Reddit. And that's where I find most people now is Reddit. And so people
yeah,
do respond. But I was trying to get some like small indie bands that like you probably haven't even heard of on here.
yeah,
And just like no luck. Like I almost kind of get the vibe like they just don't really in general, it's a generalization, but don't really like to be on podcasts very much or just kind of talk in general. They're all kind of like you said with those three, like
like
kind of just like
super introverted and yeah,
yeah. And even some that I've heard, like obviously the obvious one would be like Rivers Cuomo from like Weezer or something. He's
yeah.
supposed to be like super introverted. But like
He was on Conan O'Brien's podcast last month, I
yeah,
think, which was
yeah.
pretty good.
I actually started my girlfriend listened. I started listening to it and for whatever reason turned it off. Not because it was bad, just because I have just so many fucking podcasts to listen to
Yeah.
that I just like, dude, it's gotten bad because I'm a delivery driver for my job for
Yeah,
Amazon. And so, I mean, I just listen to one after the other all day. And so
all
I have a
day.
ton of time to listen to them, but I have a ton that I listen to too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I listened to the guy from Portugal, the man, actually on a
Yeah.
podcast of a guy that I interviewed. That's one of the guys I interviewed back on my podcast. It's under like stoicism, because that's what he talked about.
Mhm.
He interviewed him, and dude, he was just out of it, man. I mean, it's not even in a bad way. He was just kind of like, you could just tell he was like, they were talking about anxiety and stuff, and he was just like, not out of it in like a druggy way, just more in just like a mellow, kind of like shy, nice, just dazed way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like you have to like pull information out of him like constantly type.
Yeah, but then at
Yeah.
some point he kind of just started talking, and it was just
Yeah.
like going, like he was just rambling kind of. But yeah, they're cool. So I already asked you about what you're listening to recently, but I definitely like to try and find out more. I'm always looking for more bands, like I said, podcasts, movies, everything,
Yeah.
TV shows. So as far as bands go, you said Bruce Springsteen was the only one, but
That's
are there any
what I've been
other
listening
ones?
to like this past week. But no, the bands I
Yeah.
listen to frequently, like here ones that I'm always like going back to. Mute Math is one of them. I don't know if you've ever
Okay.
heard Mute Math, but
I
they're
saw him. I saw him live
did you?
at the
Oh my
Glass House a
god.
long time ago.
Oh
Yeah.
my god. Best live
Yeah.
show ever. Like they always put on a phenomenal live show. There's a band from New Jersey called Arizona that I absolutely love. They're more of like they're very kind of like a poppy, I don't even know how to describe them, like a synth pop type band a little bit. They have like some tropical vibes to them a little bit, but the first time I heard them, I was instantly hooked. I'm trying to think of other bands that I listen to frequently that I always go back to. There's this like new upcoming guy named Jake Wesley Rogers who has just an incredible voice. Like he reminds me of kind of like a modern day Elton John almost, but with more of a vocal range. Like he can get really, really high, and he has like a little bit of rasp to his voice too. Really, really good. I think he was actually just opening up for Panic at the Disco on their latest tour as well. Like he was their support act. So
What are your thoughts on Panic at the Disco? Like their new stuff?
ugh, I didn't love the new album at all. I listened to it like once through. It didn't blow me away. I don't know. I bet you if I listen to it a little bit more, it might grow on me a bit. But it reminds me of like the first time I heard Pretty Odd, like I think that was their second album that they put out where they tried to be the Beatles.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that a little bit, but more of like a rock and roll tone to it. So I don't know. I think I need to be in the right mood for that. Like there's some albums that I just don't like offhand to start with, and then I'll go back and revisit and be like, oh, this isn't too bad. It's like you have to be in the right frame of mind and the right mood for some music, I guess.
Yeah. What's funny is you mentioned Pretty Odd, and I actually was into that album, but it was probably more of like just a couple of the first couple songs I really liked. I
Yeah.
don't know if you remember the first ones, but
Oh, I
so I
do.
was into the
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
I
love it
would
now. I literally have it
Oh,
on
okay.
vinyl now.
Yeah.
Like it's a great album.
Oh,
I hated it because it's
yeah.
like you hear the first Panic at the Disco album and you're like, oh man, you got like the emo and like the pop punk like mixed in together with this dude that has an amazing vocal. And then they completely changed their sound for the second one. You're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, why?
It was weird.
Yeah,
It
it
was weird,
was.
man.
It was.
And then what's even kind of weirder is I think mainly him at this point. It's mainly just him, right? They
Yeah.
took like a downturn. Like their first album was huge. The second one, I think, was still big, but went down. Then I didn't hear about them for like 10 years, maybe even 15. And now
Yeah.
they're back with the last album, bigger than ever.
Yeah.
I think speaking of Taylor Swift, didn't he? I think that he and her sang a song together or
They
something.
did. Yeah. They had that one called Me on her Lover album that came out 2 or 3
Okay.
years ago. Yeah.
So I think is the band just him at this point? Because I know when you go
It
to like
is.
their cover page, it's just him.
Yeah, it's
So
pretty much
he's
just him. He's the only
yeah.
remaining member of the original, but he does have a touring band that is consistent. Like they have been with him for probably at least 5 or 6 years now. Like the same exact players. I got to see him live on the Pray for the Wicked tour, which is the album before this one that just came out. And it was amazing. It was a great show. His voice is unbelievable. Like he has one of the best voices of like the last 2 decades, I think, as far as vocalists go.
Yeah,
And
he hits
just
it,
range.
hits it live.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Didn't miss a note the entire show.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that they are whatever are one of the bands that are still, I mean, obviously Fall Out Boy is still huge, but I think I've talked to a guest on this, a rapper on this podcast about them, how they kind of like transition into like almost like rap, kind of like rap pop punk. They had like, I don't know. I think they had some rappers on their album. You know, they had started doing trap beats and stuff. It got kind of weird.
Yeah, the latest album was just absolute trash. It was so bad. I think it was was it Mania? I think it was Mania. Oh my god.
Yeah.
What an awful album. Even they say it. I don't know. I started reading Joe Troman, their guitar player, put out a book last month, and I started reading it, and he actually talked about how much they didn't like the way that album came out at all. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, at least you can recognize that it is an absolute piece of garbage. So yeah, it's real bad. I don't know. Wait, I mean, It's either you get that or you get the one they put out before that, which was basically like, I like to call it their ESPN album, because like every song on that album, they were basically trying to make it onto like some sort of Super Bowl commercial or something like that. Like they had that Centuries song and all that other shit. It's like, okay, all right, guys, we get it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think they definitely sold out, but I don't know if it worked. You know what I mean? It's like the
Yeah.
point of selling out, guys, is to like get bigger. I don't. Maybe it did. I mean, maybe they hit new levels that I don't know about, but
I mean, they're still having to co-headline big tours. Like they did that mega tour with Weezer and Green Day. So I
yeah,
mean, and they were, I don't even think they were selling out stadiums with that tour. They were doing like bigger arenas and stuff, but I mean, those are three
yeah,
big bands and they're still not selling places out.
yeah. They had to go back down to playing clubs because nobody liked their new album. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, for real.
But yeah, I mean,
They do better in
speaking,
clubs, I think.
Oh yeah, speaking of clubs, I saw them. I don't know if you've heard of Soma in San Diego. It was like a big Blink-182 venue when they were getting big in San Diego.
Yeah.
I saw them. It was Taking Back Sunday, Fall Out Boy, and I kind of want to almost say like Matchbook Romance instead of like My Chemical Romance. You know, you remember them?
Oh, I remember them well. I toured with them for 2 weeks.
Matchbook Romance
Yes,
or
Matchbook
My
Romance.
Chemical
Matchbook Romance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
I
those
think
dudes.
yeah, I think it was them. And I'm almost positive I missed Fall Out Boy. I want to say I honestly like it's almost like I don't know for sure, but I'm almost positive it was Fall Out Boy. I remember him wearing that hat,
Yeah,
and it was Fall Out Boy, and then Taking Back Sunday. And I think during Fall Out Boy, I was like outside, and I didn't know who they were at the time.
yeah.
And it was a relatively small venue, but yeah. So speaking of you and your music and your band,
Mhm.
I was in a band one time too, and you keep mentioning playing with these bands.
Yeah.
We almost got onto a show with Brand New, who is my favorite band,
Yeah.
or one of, and Taking Back Sunday in like Utah. We were at like a random club in Utah, and I think a band dropped out or something, and they're like, "Dude, can we get on? Is there any way we can get on this?" And we did. We didn't, but yeah. So speaking of your band, so you played with Fall Out Boy, Matchbook Romance.
hmm
What's the name of your band?
Well,
Your band?
back then, I'm trying to think which one it was. It was called Dim Star back then. I that band, like that was when I lived in Pittsburgh still. So, and since then, like I've moved to Charlotte. That band broke up. I've been in so many freaking bands, it's ridiculous. I moved down here and I've played in like 2 or 3 different bands down here too. I don't know. It's hard for me to like stick with one style, one genre. I like playing a bunch of different stuff. So, but yeah, I had one band that was called Thought Deposit. We played with like, I don't know if, do you know Punchline? I don't know if you know Punchline. They're
I've
dudes
heard
from
of
Pittsburgh.
them.
They never
I've
got
heard
like
of them.
super big. Yeah. They never got super big. They're
Pop
like
punk.
Pittsburgh boys. Yeah. Pop punk guys. They were signed to Fueled by Ramen for I think a couple of records. But they never really got huge, but they're still around. Like they still tour, which is crazy to me. And they started like in 1997, 98, something like that. And they're still playing. And I don't know that they're making a living, but they're still playing, you know. I respect it.
Yeah, I heard a guy from actually Lawrence. Do you remember the band Lawrence Arms?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, so a guy from that band, and they're still a band, or they were still a band, I guess. He was on that Vampire Weekend show,
Yeah.
and he was saying they're still playing, and I guess they're just constantly touring to make money. That's what they do, is just constantly tour because they're not selling enough albums, I don't think, or making enough money on Spotify. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that I want to say one of the guys from that band went to like Alkaline Trio, and before Alkaline Trio, he was in like this band called Slapstick that was like a ska band. Do you remember?
I remember them too. Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
This is crazy, man, because sometimes these things don't go well if we don't have enough to talk about. But me and you have like so much in common with this music stuff.
Listen, I grew up with that. Like that literally is like my teenage years right there. I mean, I opened up for a bunch of different ska bands and stuff too back in the day. I don't. Do you remember there was a band called River City High? We opened for them a couple of times.
I want to say there was Bayside too.
Yeah, Bayside.
Which for some reason like reminds me of that name.
Yeah.
Like Bayside High or something.
I'm trying to think. The Mad Caddies. There was one other band we opened up for too. I can never remember the name of them. They have such a weird name, but they were like another ska band. Yeah, I love those guys.
Was like the big one.
Yeah, Real Big Fish and
Less Than Jake.
Less Than Jake, Goldfinger. Like those were, ugh, I loved those guys.
What was the hardcore ska? I was trying to think of the only reason I'm asking is I was trying to think of their band name the other day.
Mephistopheles?
No, it was like the only way I can explain it that it would remind you would be like it was a hard, like literally like, kind of like hardcore ska. Like they would play ska, but then go into like this hardcore kind of like breakdown. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, so in your band, you were what? I'm gonna guess you're the singer and guitar player.
I in some of them, yes. In these pop punk bands, like back, I was actually just the guitar player and like backup vocalist. At that time, we just had like a straight lead vocalist that would handle everything. But I did a majority of the songwriting along with like the other actually was the bass player. He and I did most of the songwriting, and we just had a lead singer because he was way better than us at singing at that point. So later on in life, I took vocal lessons and got better at it. So, but back
And are you
then,
still in a
I'm
band?
glad. No, I actually I stopped doing the band thing, I think in 2017, something around there. I just got sick of carrying the shit around, man. It just like after a while, like carrying gear around, showing up for shows, and the Charlotte music scene here is not great. Unless you're a very well-known artist, it's hard to get people to come out to shows down here. So it was kind of a lost cause. Like we played a bunch of gigs and some like nicer venues too, and get maybe 15, 20 people there. So, and that goes from like, I was up in Pittsburgh and we're selling out like 2,000 seat venues. It's a complete like flip flop, man. Like Charlotte's,
Yeah,
it's a weird scene down here. There's a lot of 90s covers bands. Those are the ones that typically do pretty well and get a lot of the gigs. So
it's kind of like it's almost sounds like I don't even know, like kind of like a Creed type area or something. Like
a little bit. Well, it was like, so this has been a big metal area for a long time too. So there's a lot of metal heads down here, a lot of metal bands that had basically like the majority of the shows you would go to at a lot of the venues around here. It was always a metal show, and those are the ones that kids would show up to. I was never a big metal kid, so yeah, when I moved down here, I played more like pop rock type stuff, and it just, I don't know, it's not very popular down here. So
yeah, I remember hearing, I don't know if this is still the case, but a while back, like Chapel Hill, North Carolina was like
mhm.
was kind of like a popular spot for like indie folk kind of stuff, right?
It's really good. So there, and then there's also Asheville, which is it's further west of Charlotte. It's more towards like the Tennessee side. They have a great indie scene over there, and they have like a couple of venues too. They get a lot of like the indie rock bands in there. Like we saw Tame Impala there. We saw I don't know if you know the band Tennis. They're like an
Yeah,
indie band. We saw
yeah.
them there earlier this year. Really good show at the Orange. I think it's called the Orange Peel. Yeah, the Orange Peel. So like they get a lot of cool shows. Like Asheville's like an indie hotbed. Unfortunately, it's like 2 hours away. So
Is that considered Chapel Hill? Is that like the
so
same area?
Chapel Hill is further east. So it's more towards like the ocean side, like more towards the
Okay.
coast in a way. It's about 2.5, 3 hours from where I'm at. But it's like that's where like the major UNC, like the college is in Chapel Hill. So that's why like it's such a like a good music area over there.
Okay. And what bands am I thinking of that came from there? I want to say like Connor Connor Oberst from Bright Eyes, I'm sure. Like his
Yeah,
brother lived there or something. I know he
it's
died,
possible.
but I know there's some other bands that I want to say came from there, but I can't think of them right now.
Well, the biggest ones I know of from around here, the Avett brothers are like huge here. They're from like around this area.
Are you into that kind of
No.
stuff? No.
I was for like a minute. I never could get into the Avett brothers. I was the biggest fan of like Ryan Adams for a while. I liked his
Yeah.
stuff, but
I never got into Ryan Adams for some reason. Like people, it just wasn't in my like my I don't know, my for some reason I just never got into him. Like people told me he was really good. He was kind of like a
yeah,
Bright Eyes type guy. And then
he
I guess
was.
he had that falling out with like he got canceled or whatever,
Yeah, he's back
and
again
then
though.
he's back. They always come back, right?
They
It
always
never
do come
lasts for
back.
too long.
And that's the thing, like everything he was like quote unquote canceled for, like nothing ever came to light, and there was nothing that ever came of it after that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. He I still listen to some of his stuff. I mean, I actually just got actually one of his cassette tapes in the mail today. So
New?
I've been
Is it new one?
Ryan Adams. Yeah, it's 2 albums ago called Prisoner.
That's
Um,
interesting. Tape. I know that they were kind of making a comeback, right? Or they are, I guess.
oh, they are,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I've been getting into cassette tapes the last like couple of months, just finding them at record store. They're so cheap now too. And it's like I'm reliving the 90s all over again, man.
Yeah. That's what it's all about, man.
It is.
Yeah, the Avid brothers, I might be wrong about this, but I want to say I listened to a podcast where they had the theme song and it was called, if you're into true crime podcasts at all, it was called Dan I'm forgetting the name of it now. I'm like blinking. I'm forgetting the name, but anyways, they were on I'm pretty sure their song was on a podcast I listened to, and I liked the song.
Yeah.
It was good with the podcast. I want to say it was called oh yeah, Tom Brown's Body. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, haven't heard of that.
No. All right. It doesn't really matter, but that's like the main reason I know them. And there's another band that I've heard. I want to say they're from that area called Camp. Have you heard of them by any chance? CAA.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Are
I
they
like
from there
Camp.
too?
Yeah, I think they are from North Carolina.
I
I'm
think
trying to
I
think
know they're
if they're
from the South.
They definitely are.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh no. Let's see. Camp. They're from Ohio, actually. Huh.
Yeah. I was honestly kind of just guessing with that. I was like,
Yeah.
they're probably from that area, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're good though. I do like them. I've heard a couple of songs of theirs that I really like. So who else have
Yeah.
you been listening to lately? Like, do you have any good recommendations for me?
Yeah, I was actually gonna plug that if you didn't ask me. I was like, I'm gonna get my shit out there.
I got you, man.
Honestly, I might have to look like on my phone, but I want to. So one band, one guy, I think mainly that I'm into. That's pretty weird, but it's called Young Jesus. Have you heard of him by any chance?
I have. Yeah, that name. I don't think I've heard any of his stuff, but the name sounds really familiar.
Yeah. So there's Young Jesus, which he definitely has a weird voice. It's like the first time you hear it, you're kind of like, oh, what is this? It's kind of like a.
Is it like the Brad Eyes type thing? Like you hear Conor Oberst's voice, you're like, man, this kind of sucks. And then like after you listen to it for a few minutes, you're like, this is actually kind of good.
It grows on you, yeah.
It
So
does.
I'm actually gonna have to. Quick.
Oh, I lost you. Okay, you're back.
You there?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
I'm here.
Maybe I shouldn't look. I was just looking real quick because it's like one of those things where I always blank. But okay, I said Frank Ocean, but I'd say that's just kind of like an obvious one.
Yeah.
There's Young Jesus. There's you know when somebody asks you,
Oh, it's the
I'm
worst.
totally blinking now.
It's the absolute worst. I literally like if no one asked me, I could probably name like one after another off. But as soon as I get
I was
asked,
going to
I'm
ask
like,
you about this. Do you know Tim Heidecker?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, so Tim Heidecker is from Pennsylvania,
Mhm.
and he's a comedian, but his new album's really good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
I'll
think there
have to
might
check it
be a
out.
little bit of a. I think we got a little bit of a delay going on.
Oh, yeah. It does look like it.
Hold on one second.